Welcome to Comic Book Cache. I'm Grant, and today we're going to ask the question, what does Keith Giffen and Todd McFarlane have against Australia? We have in front of me is 3 books from DC's Invasion crossover series or mini event. It's a lesser known and a lesser celebrated DC event. It took place in the late 80s. And I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at it today because today is actually Aussie Comic Book Day. It's a day that we have just started celebrating in Australia that a lot of local creators are getting behind as a way to help promote the small but very encouraging scene of independent comics that we have in Australia. Instead of just going through some of my personal collection of Australian comics, I thought it might be interesting to see how Australia fares on the world stage. In this case, Australia plays a small but important part in the Invasion series. So it's 3 books, The Alien Alliance, Battleground Earth, and World Without Heroes. I'm probably just going to concentrate on the first book today, and in my opinion, it's the better of the 3 books. It starts off reasonably strong, and by the 3rd book, it's gone downhill pretty quickly. So we'll start with this book, and also the other reason why we want to look at this book, maybe half of the second, is because Todd McFarlane was the one who did the pencils. And this was actually Todd's final work before he crossed over to Marvel and started his now legendary run on Spider-Man, in Amazing Spider-Man. We'll see some parts of Todd McFarlane in this book, but it's mostly Keith Giffen. Keith Giffen did the plot and breakdown, so he did the layouts, and Todd came in to fill over the top of it. Maybe that's a reason why Todd made the switch to Marvel. I'm not sure. He has spoken about these books before. He said one of his regrets was actually not finishing this 3-book series. He does get halfway through book 2 before it's taken over by someone else who I can't remember. So yeah, we'll see if we can spot where Todd's influence comes from, but most of it's just Keith Giffen, I would say, with some splashes of Todd. So as we said, plot and breakdowns for Keith Giffen, pencils by Todd McFarlane, the scripts by Bill Mantlo. So Keith Giffen obviously had the complete oversight for this mini-series for DC, and then the others just came in to fill in the finer details. So we start with a couple of new villains straight off the bat. We have 2 different races here, the Dominators and the Kurigs. I don't think I'll pronounce that correctly. I'll check it on the next couple of pages. But they've taken a bunch of people hostage from Earth so that they can test out whether or not they can activate the meta gene that lies within some humans and turns them into superheroes. It would explain humanity's remarkable ability to develop superpowers in response to adverse stimuli. So they've captured these humans, they put them through a test of, I guess the closest thing would be sounds like Squid Game today or Hunger Games, to see if the adversity they face triggers some sort of latent superpowers within them. First up here, I think we might see some Todd McFarlane already. You can see these 3 panels of big guns. To me, they look very Rob Liefeld style. There's a lot of muzzles and a lot of bits and pieces attached to it for no real reason. It's something you would see Cable carrying probably. So I'm not sure if Todd took influence from Liefeld, because Todd doesn't really get a chance to work with weapons and things so much. He's much more of a natural character player. When you see Spider-Man and Spawn and so on, they're much more natural, less mechanical. So that's kind of interesting to see. I think that might be a bit of Todd's influence there. Get a pretty harsh shot to the face straight up there. So we're just going through the Dominators' plot of why and what they were doing to trigger these superhuman powers within humans and what it means to them. They're afraid that because they want to be the all-encompassing force in the universe, they're afraid that one day Earth might come after them with their superheroes. So it's pretty standard sort of us versus them story. There's a little bit more going on to it in that these Dominators have a caste system caste counselors, and a few others. So there's a hierarchy within their own race, but they actually say around here that despite the caste system, they're all identical. All alone among the races, mankind lacks homogeneity. In contrast, although divided by caste, all dominators are physiologically the same. So in addition to us versus them, we also have this kind of sort of racism trope where we want to kill them, being the humans, just because they aren't like us. We would prefer everyone to be more like us. So it kind of has that going for it. It doesn't really develop much further than just surface level comic tropes. So just more of the dominators talking about their plans and how they want to rule the world. Pretty standard stuff. Here they go after some of the other worlds who they think may or may not join their alliance. And we see a couple of Green Lanterns in this case. Something must have been happening in the Green Lantern book at the time that I'm not familiar with, but all the Green Lanterns have been depowered for some reason. Later on, Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner show up and they've still got their powers, but the rest of the Green Lanterns across the universe seem to be all powerless. So something must have been going on in the books at that stage. More Green Lanterns. Here we see the Thangarians, which is where the world that Hawkman is from. They decide to team up with the Dominators and become part of their alliance. So we're starting to see more worlds join their team up against Earth. And now we're introduced to Adam Strange. Adam Strange is a bit of a weird character in this book. The first book, there's quite a bit of plot surrounding him. Just here, he's deciding to give himself up to the Alliance so that they don't attack his planet of Ran. And then later on, he escapes using his beam back to Earth, but then is recaptured again. And they do imply that he's going to be a bigger part of the story, but in the end, he volunteers himself, escapes, and gets caught immediately and taken back. And that's pretty much his entire plot throughout all these 3 books. So it was a bit of a waste. So there he is flying off. There's a lot of ships in this book. It's a sci-fi book at heart, especially this first book. Book 2 and 3 take place more on Earth, but this first book is definitely a sci-fi book. There's a lot of ships. I'm not sure if Todd or Keith would have drawn them, but they've definitely got a hint of Kirby to them. Not so much that one, but later on, there's some big armadas with some very Kirby-looking ships. I like this panel here. It shows all the different planets that have joined the Alliance against Earth. So yeah, you can see here we've got a massive ship. I actually quite like this page. It's a single page, but I could see this working really well in a cinematic view. If the camera came along, panned up the spaceship while still zooming out to show the enormous size of it, and then the small aircraft coming forward straight from the viewer's point of view, that would look amazing in a cinematic type of thing. Works really well here in comic too. It shows scope and size of the bad guys and what they're capable of. Although this kind of backflips on itself a little later, but it's quite good here. Spider, drawn by Todd, pre-Spider-Man. It's just a machine by one of the alien races. These spiders put people in cocoons. Nothing really too fancy about it, but cool to see Todd draw a spider. Here we have just Adam Strange being captured. Nothing much really happening there. Like I said, it ends up being a bit of a dead story. Next up, we're introduced to the Omega Men, who I think premiered around this time. Really, they're only really famous for introducing Lobo to the DC universe, but they did have their own book at one stage. So at this point, I should probably mention one of the big faults with this book, with the story itself, is the lack of heroes. The first book centers mostly on the villains and their plan and the coming together of their alliance, which I actually quite like, and it's probably the most interesting part of the series overall. But later on, when we're introduced to the actual heroes on Earth, so we can see your normal sort of JLA members here, they're all pretty uninteresting and uninvolved. They in typical crossover style or miniseries style, they only get a few pages and a few lines each character, so they don't really do much. An example is whenever Superman's on a page, all he talks about is like the motivation or the talking up of their chances up against these aliens. So he's just there to motivate all the superheroes to go fight in this war. He doesn't really say much. He's not really a major part of the plot. None of these heroes are, which is very disappointing. If you're a superhero book, you probably should want to introduce the major superheroes the first chance you get instead of waiting for book 2. But instead in book 1, we're introduced to the Omega Men, and being Keith Giffen, he's obviously famous for his Justice League International stuff, where he likes playing with underused characters, a la Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Guy Gardner, those sorts of characters. And he does it again in this book. He plays with the Omega Men. He plays with Adam Strange. He plays with the characters that they exist in the space world of DC Universe, but really they're not DC's strongest selling point, are they? So that giant ship that we saw before that I really liked, it actually turns out to be an organic group of aliens who can shapeshift. So back here we had the giant spacecraft that looked really impressive. It's showing space, the size of the armies, and then it turns out to be just a trick to lure the heroes in, which I kind of thought was pretty disappointing. I like this panel here. We have, I think his name's Tigor from the Omega Men. I presume Todd probably did this one, but you can see a real. It shows how he's running really fast, basically using the background lines as motion lines or motion blurs, but instead it actually looks like a background of part of the ship itself. So it's a nice little clever trick to not have the obvious motion lines into a thing, although it does have the one at his feet down there. So yeah, this alien race has gone on to attack the Omega Men. Omega Men are a bit like Adam Strange. They're introduced early. They promise great things, but nothing really happens with them. They just get captured. Big explosion. Another weird type of ship, just like almost a Star Trek Borg cube. You can see some of the character designs too here. I'm not sure what's going on with this guy. They are definitely shorter than some of these other aliens, but look at the size of those legs. They're massive. He's like a dwarf, he is. So we've returned back to the aliens. Adam Strange has been locked up in one of their prisons. He's trying to convince the other prisoners to rise up and go against them, but they say no. It's a nice big page too. All the spaceships in the background. It shows. Oh, it just looks good. More of these weird looking spaceships. They're pretty basic, but later on we see some really good big armada drawings. So these ones are pretty forgivable at this stage. You can see here another one. They're dreadnoughts or something. Look at the size of those things. What do they do? What do they do on the ship? That's, again, that belongs on Cable's belt. Then it does belong on a spaceship. So nice character designs on these Dominators too, with the teeth. Obviously Todd McFarlane would go on to co-create Venom, so he knows a lot about teeth. Here we go. Look at this armada. So here we get a bunch of different ships. That really shows the size of the alien force. So we're into chapter 3 at this stage, I believe, of the first book. The Dominators are deciding how they're going to attack, or just putting their plan in order. They fly to Earth. Another shot of the Armada arriving. More of that. So poor Todd had to draw a lot of spaceships. Here's Adam Strange arriving back on Earth. Zeta Beam took him back. Immediately finds out his helicopter's been crashed and the aliens are there waiting for him. So his whole story was pointless. 2 pages, ends the whole thing. Just a lot of back and forward between the villains of the book, explaining what they're doing and why they're doing it. These are 80-page books too, I should mention. 80 pages, no ads. Perfect bound, which is really nice. Bit of a throwback to the Silver Age 80-page giant specials that they used to do. I'm not sure if that was their intent with this, but works really well when it's only a 3-part miniseries. It works really well to do books like this. Although it's 3 parts, it's actually each book's broken up into 3 chapters. So essentially, it's more than that. But very cool. But there's a lot of filler. There's a lot of exposition that goes on in pages, and things like the Adam Strange plot line are just there, I presume, to make up page numbers. Here we go. So the Armada has flown into Earth's atmosphere and they've parked themselves all over the city, all over cities across the world. In this case, we're going to be focusing on Melbourne, which is Australia's second biggest city, behind Sydney. On world maps, Melbourne this day will be renamed Beachhead Earth. So the cityscape of Melbourne does have a pretty vibrant CBD, so that doesn't look too unrealistic. Now train their high-resolution lenses upon Australia, the Alliance ostentatiously transforms the former state of New South Wales into a vast containment camp. New South Wales is the state that Sydney is in, so they've basically taken over probably our most populous state and turned it into a slavery camp. So that's where the question comes from, or here as well. What did we come here for? Where did you lead me? To what was once the downtown sector of Australia's capital city of Canberra. So that's the part that made me think why they were picking on Australia. In terms of plot, it does make sense that the aliens would choose a country, an easier country to conquer first to show their might, because Australia's only superhero is the Tasmanian Devil, who's a bit of a lackluster hero, only has minor appearances in various books, and his powers are pretty weak. So because he's the only superhero in the country, they take over Australia, which I thought was an interesting choice by Giffen, and he obviously put a little bit of research into it because internationally, when most people think of Australia, they'll think of Sydney or Melbourne. Very few people will mention Canberra, which is actually the capital of our nation. So he knows enough about the nation to include Canberra, which makes me think he really thought about choosing Australia to be the country that we invade. Which, again, yes, that serves the plot, but as an Australian, it's kind of condescending that we would go down so easy without a fight. And at this stage, Amanda Waller and the Suicide Squad is introduced. And then we start seeing the heroes and they start to work out their plan of what they have to do. So we can see here's a map of Australia and the cities they've conquered. Down the bottom is Melbourne. That would be Sydney. That might be Perth. That best would be Alice Springs in the center of the country, which is all desert. And the humans, again, just trying to work out their plan. And that's the end of the book. There is another part I mentioned, just back on this Australia thing. There is a part where the aliens destroy the Australian Defence Forces. Maybe it's in book 2, but I'm pretty sure it's in this book. No, it must be in book 2. But yeah, they take out Australia's Defence Forces rather quickly, which, to be fair, they probably could do to the US as well, given that they're aliens with all these advanced technologies. But still disappointing that Australia was chosen, goes down too easy, and we've only got one superhero. I think currently DC might have 2. The Tasmanian Devil's still around, I believe, and then we have another another young girl who I think might be a Teen Titan or something like that, but she's got like mental powers or something like that. I can't remember her name, haven't seen her a lot, but they're the only two superheroes that Australia has in the DC universe. In the Marvel universe, we have slightly more, but still not many. So we're into book 2. This is where the superheroes come forward to take on the aliens. The aliens put forward their option of you give us your superheroes and we'll let the planet survive. And the superheroes consider it before eventually they talk them into doing a 24-hour ceasefire. And it's also at this stage, halfway through this book, that Todd McFarlane leaves the book. Quickly, keep a tight attack formation, heroes. We're going in to invade Australia? Gosh. And then Guy Gardner with a little thing. But yeah, that's pretty much all Superman says throughout the whole series, is just these motivational speeches to keep them all going. Keep up the pressure, heroes. We're fighting for our world. Kind of uninspiring. There's Peacemaker. Yeah, I've forgotten where I was before that, but yeah, so. The Atlanteans are fighting aliens under seas, because apparently the aliens are under seas. Yeah, pretty all stock standard stuff. By the end of this book, by the end of book 2, the superheroes have won, the aliens have been pushed back, and that will lead in, and you would think the story would end there, given that the aliens have lost and everyone's okay. But we actually have a third book to go, because right at the end of this book, of book 2, we discover that one of the dominators, one of the lower caste dominators, has actually been working on a bomb to hopefully wipe out all superheroes of Earth, which he deploys as they are retreating. It actually became known as the gene bomb, or the metagene bomb. It kind of had a reasonably important part of the DC universe going forward, as it allows, it explodes and awakens the superpowers of just regular people. Kind of like what the Terrigen Mists do for the Inhumans over at Marvel. So he releases this giant bomb. Earth, all the superheroes, most of the superheroes of Earth go crazy. At least the ones that were born with superpowers. So people like Booster and Batman, who don't actually have any superpowers, are fine. But the characters like Black Lightning, the Flash, the ones who are born with superpowers, they basically turn mad and start attacking everyone. So probably for the first half of the book, it's really all about that. How to contain their own superheroes. Again, we're sort of still dealing with lesser characters. Mr. Miracle wasn't really a big thing at this point in time. Although we do get the Flash and stuff. Guy Gardner, he was pretty popular as well. Martian Manhunter, yeah, that's pretty good. Doom Patrol makes quite a big appearance in this book as well, because they actually go ahead and kill off a few Doom Patrol members. That's so that almost immediately after this, Grant Morrison takes over the Doom Patrol books in his run, and he wanted a clean slate of characters to work with. And that's probably the only major death that these books actually deal with, is members of the Doom Patrol. So we're into chapter 2, and I think at this stage, Todd McFarlane's off the book. He's moved over to Marvel to commence Spider-Man drawing duties, and we're left with a much more bland in-house style. Back in space with the Green Lanterns, the Omega Men. So they all come together in the end, obviously. And the Dominators are still back off their planet. Yeah, it's a bit of a lackluster ending to what started out as a really promising series. It took an odd turn when it finished book 2, and then book 3 seemed like it was almost a completely different story. Something that would have happened much later, but they tie it straight back into the previous book to make it continue, but it doesn't quite work for me. The change of artist, I think, is pretty noticeable. understandable that Todd McFarlane would choose to leave so he can go work on Spider-Man, but because of that, this book really does suffer with its consistency. Nothing really much happening. It's just all action scenes until the end. And Superman comes and saves the day. Humans congratulate themselves. We done really well. We win. And that's it. Rebirth. Earth's heroes are cured. So yeah, so that is the 3-part series of Invasion. I should mention it was done in 1988. Obviously it's post-Crisis, but pre every other Crisis book. It kind of had some major implications for the DC universe moving forward, but not really. And it was only with minor characters anyway. But it did allow Grant Morrison to start his Doom Patrol run. We get to see Todd McFarlane play with some of the DC heroes, so it's kind of worth it for that. And of course the question is still, why did they pick Australia? Why was Australia chosen as the easy win for the aliens? Anyway, thanks for watching. See you later.